All right, so here we are, and I wanted to start by sharing something that is on my one of my friends in a picture on Facebook that I have access to has shown that in Texas we have live poker again. This is, from what I understand, this is in Houston, Texas. I'm pretty sure that this is in Texas. I have cut it out a little bit so that we can't see who this is, but I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's like it's public, right? Like, if anyone called and said, "Are you open?" They're gonna say yes, they're open. I just don't want there to be um, me sharing anyone specifically. But as you can see in the bottom right corner, there is a picture of somebody in a mask that is a shift manager that's working there, and you can see that this room is open and they are playing apparently seven-handed. So to show what the actual picture is saying here, I can read this. And I'll give you guys a chance to actually look at this picture for a moment so you can see what this says. But anyone looking to play some social distancing poker, this room is open every day, 7 players per table, face masks supplied, temperatures checked at the door. And there's a picture of what it looks like in there. And so there's a couple things that I want to kind of touch on real quick about this. Thing number one, when you look at the people that are playing poker there, so people are asking, like, what's the deal when poker comes back? Are people going to play? The thing that I have been saying is I don't believe that people that are older at the at-risk age range are going to come back and play. But literally right here we can see that they are. Like, there's people in this picture that are what I would consider to be at risk, and there they are still deciding to play poker anyway. Now, I'm not going to judge one way or another for whether or not this is a good thing that this poker room is open, okay? I'm not trying to take a stance on that. I just want you guys to see that people are playing poker right now. And so some of the people in the comments in this Facebook post that I don't want to scroll through them. I just want to kind of give you guys some insight into what they are. And I'm actually going to remove this for a second here. So some of the comments that I'm seeing in here, some people are saying, like, "Wow, I can't believe that there's a room that's open right now." Other people are saying, like, "Road trip, I'm headed there right now." Some people have asked questions such as, "Are masks required?" They are. The answer was they're not required, but they are heavily recommended. And like you can see in that picture that I had up there before, it seemed like about 50% or more of the players were actually wearing masks at the table. And we've all seen some crazy pictures lately of, from what I understand, it was a poker room in South Florida near where I'm at, Hialeah, that had a glass casing that they were testing on top of a table, to hypothetically play poker that way. Personally, I saw some issues with the way that it was set up, but that's them testing it. They weren't opening the room with that thing. If you haven't seen that picture, I will find that picture today in this session, and I'll show that to you guys. But I just wanted to talk through this for a second. So first of all, seven-handed, that's their solution. Okay, does that make sense to me? I don't see much of a difference between that and the normal nine-handed. Well, if they say seven-handed is safer, they say seven-handed is safer. It's what they decided to do. They called it social distancing poker. The poker table still seems to be the same. I'm not sure what procedures they have in place. I haven't talked to him or anything like that. He is somebody that I used to work with. That's how I have him as a Facebook friend, and in my experience, super respectable guy. Let's see, what else did they say there? They said that people were asking if they were going to be hiring dealers, and I think that this is very relevant for anybody that would be watching me right now. He said they are absolutely going to need to be hiring dealers, and let me try to find the quote. Let's see. All right. If I go to the comments, people are making fun of his haircut. People are they're just relentless. Okay, this is in Houston, Texas. And someone said need dealers, and the response from him, who is, I believe, a shift manager there, said, absolutely will once we get back to full capacity. And then he said they're at about 25% capacity right now. Yeah, it says, someone else said, you need dealers? And the answer was, we are always looking for good dealers, but we're currently on 25% capacity. I will let you know when it's back to 100%. So first of all, in Texas, they need dealers a lot already. And second of all, the general consensus is a lot of dealers have absolutely moved on. You know, you don't spend this much time not working in a poker room and automatically come back. There are a lot of things that can happen that can lead poker dealers to move on. And as we mentioned, if games are opening shorthanded and they're never filling up to 9 or 10 players like they used to, those extra 2 to 4 players per table are going to be playing on other tables. You end up with more tables open. So even if you have less total players coming in the room, you still end up with the same number of tables or more for you to be spreading poker. So it creates a really interesting dynamic where, he's being asked, do you need dealers? And he's saying, I'm going to. So I've been saying this the whole time. I really believe that in the next 6 to 10 months, we're going to see more people, more poker rooms that need dealers than we've ever seen before. What I should do right now is I should find the picture, the somewhat hilarious picture of, here, let me do this like this. I think it was Hialeah Poker Room. Let's try. Trying to do the thing they're testing. So here's what we're looking at. This is posted by Andy Slater. Let me try to get this up on the screen here so that we can see what this looks like. Whoops, wrong one. If you guys haven't seen this yet, it's made its way around in the casino industry and beyond. But this right here is, so this is Hialeah. It's a poker room in South Florida. And Andy Slater he's actually a radio guy who in South Florida, he is well known because he has his own like poker tournaments that he runs at some of the casinos down there. He doesn't like run them, he's just like the celebrity for it. And he took this picture here, which it's bringing me to Twitter. I didn't want that, but let's see what happens when we get there. Right. So if you look at this right here, I mean, this is pretty wild. There's no two ways around that, right? Like, this is what they're testing. Is this what they're going to use? As someone who can speak to this, the dealer would have a very difficult time using this table. The number one thing that stands out to me is that there is a big hole in the front of the table. That's sort of a joke. Obviously, that's where the bank goes. In order for them to test this, they had to take the money out. Their way of doing it was to remove the entire bank. But you can see right here, this is not what poker is going to become. This is what Hialeah Park only is setting up to test. And in a way that's pretty humorous. ACM says, "Hi Mark, poker face mask." Yeah, I know, absolutely. So I'm gonna tell a story that I think is pretty funny. I was talking to somebody who deals on weekends, and he's the type of guy who he just like when things are brutal, it just gets to him and he fixates on it. But he's a poker dealer and he's a good guy. He's really smart, and he was like talking to me about, hey, I don't know if I can do this four-handed. Like it would be so brutal, like all this stuff. Which I know him, and I actually find it very entertaining having these types of conversations with him, because he kind of represents the guy who doesn't want to speak up, right? Like, it's just, we all deal with stuff, and as poker dealers especially, we learn Like, we got to deal with stuff, right? But my friend, he spent time as a supervisor and higher in poker. Now he's a dealer because he's doing other stuff in his life, and he just deals literally only on the weekends. And he's like, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can deal four-handed. It just sounds so brutal. And I was like, listen, you're going to be dealing at a table with a face mask. You have absolute plausible deniability. You can say anything you want and nobody can pin you to it. Just use that wisely. Which, of course, I do not support anybody doing that. But I was trying to get him to back off a little bit. But my point in saying that is, one, that is kind of funny to think about. If you're a seasoned poker dealer, you now can say anything you want and kind of not get in trouble. If other people can't hear it, nobody can see it, right? And then on top of that, which you will get in trouble, by the way, there's always ways to find out. But on top of that, it's a real sign that things are changing, right? Things are absolutely changing. For example, every single thing that I've ever taught about how to deal poker is not going to remain true. Now, that was the case before COVID happened. Now that this is going on and these major changes are potentially going to be brought to poker rooms, like it used to be, if I were to have, 1 year ago, if I were to taught a course on supervising, one of the things that I would have taught was no one is allowed to wear anything on their face in any way that impedes a full view of their face in a casino. Now, obviously, that's out the window now. It's no longer true. That is one of a bunch of things that are probably going to change. But I thought that whole thing was pretty interesting and powerful, and I thought that this picture right here that you guys can see, it says a lot, right? I mean, this is the things that we are testing. The context of this, by the way, just to be super clear, this is not being used in casinos. This was only something that was being tested in Hialeah Park in South Florida. There's no regulation on it, nothing like that. They were just seeing how it would work. And I did not hear the result of any of that. I don't know how it ended up going. All I know is that picture went viral, and for good reason. Pretty humorous. So there you go. So, in Texas, we've got poker actually starting back up. And outside of Texas, in South Florida, we got different tests going on in order to try to make poker better. So, I'm gonna say it doesn't look nice. No, it doesn't look so nice. Although I will say I have some friends who are germaphobes that now that some of this stuff is happening where there are cleanliness innovations that are required for COVID, like my germaphobe friends are saying, like, this is how I've seen the world the whole time. Like, I can't believe this is finally happening where people are stopping the spread of everything, because it's not just COVID that doesn't get spread, right? It's other stuff too. Which is interesting. I would be curious to see if the number of regular flu cases go down. Like, I imagine that all cases are going to be reduced due to the social distancing stint. And I'm also hearing that it's good for, the earth and global warming, and all this stuff is getting a positive impact as a result of this little break, right? I don't know much about any of that, but that is some of the stuff that I'm hearing. But I'm so focusing strictly on poker and where things are going. Like I said, there's poker that is being played in Texas for sure. And I didn't show you guys this. I probably made it seem like this just happened. This was from last Thursday. So it's been going on all weekend. And that is life in Houston. I also saw on social media, like, Houston seemed to be totally back up and running. And I have no idea what led the city of Houston to decide to go that route. It seems scary to me, but again, I'm not trying to judge that side of it, because I'm going to be trusting, and I'm going to say, okay, if for some reason they're deciding to do this, they have a reason for it. I know most people say now they're just dumb, but that's just what I'm saying. I'm not judging on that. ACM says, no way, it doesn't work. You go in other places and they don't have these, and what's the point? When you're saying it doesn't work, I assume that you're talking about the big glass case that goes around the table, correct? If you're talking about face masks in general, face masks have been worn in poker for years now, in certain places, and that has been normal. By the way, I don't know, maybe you couldn't see it in the picture, but here, let me bring this back up again. Maybe you couldn't quite see it in the picture, but there is room on the bottom. Here, let me show. There's room on the bottom down here where the people put their hands underneath. So the theory is with this this glass case that is 100% in a test phase. It is not in any way being used in poker at this time. 100%, this is just a test that somebody took a picture of and posted because it looks very interesting. 100% test. This is, here your hands go underneath the glass, and the purpose of the glass is to just stop the spread between. And if you can see right here, I don't know, my mouse doesn't show up. You can see right toward the bottom center of the screen, there is, well, toward the bottom left of the screen, there's a panel that also blocks the players. So, and I believe that the dealer would have this on their sides as well. This clear plastic or glass barrier to protect players. So look, I'm going to say this. I totally acknowledge, totally, that this is a lot, okay? There are absolutely parts of this that are good, though. There's no doubt about the fact that poker tables for years have been one of the grossest places that you can possibly go. That's considered mainstream in any way. So at the very least, these innovations that we are seeing are going to lead to positive change. It's just a question of how much of a change there is, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with them trying to make things more sanitary. The way that they did this here, a couple of things that stand out to me to start that I want to point out. The dealer needs to be able to reach the rail by standing up, and this particular shape does not allow that. So I would say that's one major problem. That said, you can deal without being able to reach the rail for the players, but it definitely causes some problems. I would design it so that the dealer had more ability to move around. The other thing I would say about this that I think is challenging is the ability for a player to handle their own chips, in my opinion, seems a bit too limited. You can think of different times where players stack up chips and then stack up chips on top of them, and there are some games of poker that sort of require that, and it's no longer doable with a design like this. But I mean, this is just a design. It's one design at Hialeah that they tested for fun, that in no way is this is literally what this says. For poker players, the COVID-19 pandemic has presented both online tournaments are drawing record numbers. For live poker, it's been devastating. Our friends at Hialeah Park outside of Miami think they have a solution. And no, this is not from The Onion. Let's see. Let's just make sure all cards and chips are completely sterilized. Let's see. I mean, it's just kind of showing stuff. So what I'll do is I'll go like this, and I'll come back, and you guys are here, and I'm here. So I do want to remind you guys, this is a True Poker Dealer Ask Me Anything. I know we've been going for about 20 minutes, but my specialty is anything related to working in poker I can help you with, and that includes supervising. It includes dealing, especially is what people know me for, and then there's supervising, and I've been a shift manager as well in casino poker in South Florida and in other places around the country. And I am here to answer all of your questions. Now, recently, I have been giving lessons where my intent is to finish this course that I'm making on a complete course on how to deal Texas Hold'em, specifically no limit, but I do include some limit in there. And so what I've been doing is I have been offering free online lessons, which some of you who are watching right now have been at, and I appreciate you coming to these. These lessons are free while they're happening only. So while they're live, you may come and you may participate and you may learn. This Thursday, I have a big one. It's Side Pots and Multi-Way All-Ins. That starts at 11 a.m. If you subscribe and you go check out the channel and you go to the live videos, you can actually see the schedule of what I have coming up. Some pretty important stuff coming up this week. So I do floor calls on Friday, Side Pots and Multi-Way All-Ins on Thursday, and tomorrow I'm doing Miss Blinds and Moving the Button. So these 3 days are going to be full of some of the more intense stuff that everybody wants to know. So I do recommend you jump in. Again, this is only free while it's live. After it's done, each lesson goes into the paid section. It starts out in the $5 a month section, $4.99. It stays there for a minimum of a week. That's a thank you for the people who have been paying. And then it goes to its permanent home in the course section where I'm going to probably wait to put everything there until I consider the course to be mostly done. And I see your question, AC. I'm going to answer you in a second. I love that question. I do believe that I do believe that it is important for me to say that part of the reason that I'm offering all of this information for free, and then afterwards, if you don't catch it live, it's going to be available for $50 a month, basically. The reason I'm offering it this way is because I recognize that I'm not training you, right? Normally, a poker dealing class goes from anywhere between $800 to $1,500. I mean, sometimes they're higher, and if you get super lucky, you can get it for less, but that's going to be at a casino that's like off somewhere that a lot of people wouldn't necessarily want to move to. So normally a poker dealer school is in that $1,200 range, and I'm offering it the info for $50, but it's because I'm not actually training you. You're not coming here, you're not dealing hands with me, I'm not giving you criticism, I'm not giving you feedback, right? So I'm offering the info only, and as some of the people who have come can see, it is very on point, and I cover a lot of stuff. You're going to need to like go at your own pace, watch stuff a few times sometimes in order to make sure you learn it. But if you do purchase a course, you can definitely ask questions on each video that I will answer. So now back to this. We are doing an AMA, so ask me anything. So ACM says, what famous poker players have you met? That's a great question. So first I want to think about, so I've dealt to, let me see, who have I dealt to? The top players that I can think of who are bracelet winners that I've dealt to, Jason Mercier I've dealt to, Brian Hastings I've dealt to. These guys are amazing at poker, by the way, like really, really good. And like when you say famous poker player, you're talking about the people that are at the top of the list, right? So like when I'm gonna go on Hendon Mob, and let's see, Hendon Mob. I'm gonna see who's at the top of the list, and I'll just kind of start saying who I've actually interacted with. By the way, Jason seems like an awesome guy. Brian's pretty serious. Some people like him. I didn't like or dislike him. He seemed to be a little bit judgy in a way that I didn't care for. But I also know people that say very positive things about him. Let me see. Who else is on this list that I have dealt to? I'm kind of going down the list here and seeing who. By the way, I'm not great with faces and names, so I'm definitely the type who would possibly have dealt to or even played with some of these guys, and I don't know who they are. Like, I'm pretty sure, when I think about it, I'm pretty sure that, who was it? I'm pretty sure I played 2-5 with Maria Ho. Like, I remember playing against someone who I thought was a really good player, and then seeing her later, seeing Maria Ho on some of these lists later, and being like, oh, I'm pretty sure that was her. She was really nice. People seem to really like her. Let's see. Michael Mizrachi, Robert Mizrachi. Because I'm in Florida, I run into them a handful of times. I was a part of a group in my room that did an event that we ran that was literally Michael Mizrachi's event, and he brought some of his own people there. He seemed like a good guy too. Let's see. Still going down the list. Who else have I? Oh, Jamie Gold. He seemed nice. Like, he has this terrible reputation, but he seems, in person, he seems a lot more likable. Jamie Gold, the 2006 World Series winner. Let's see. There are some like random celebrities that I've run into as well, working in casinos. It all just depends where you're at and when you're there. I've seen a lot of these guys like, Phil Hellmuth and Daniel Negreanu. I've seen all these guys when I've been at the World Series before. Federer Holtz, like I've been out there, and you just kind of like see everybody, right? Like Antonio Esfandiari, but I haven't really spent significant time in their presence, so I'm not really counting that. But yeah. Then there's also some of the, like, we think about the famous poker players who we run into. There's also the famous whales, right? The famous people who have just like bottomless pockets who everybody wants to see. Some of those are cool too. ACM says there are some old videos on some Steve Forte on YouTube. He can deal any hand that he wants cheating. Is that real? It depends. Well, let's go and do a little investigate, right? So Steve Forte YouTube, I can sort of just kind of pull this up and we can see what happens when I look at it. While I'm pulling that up, I can read this. Sparrows, hey, how's it going? It says, it seems like poker rooms are best set up to accommodate the new distancing and safety guidelines. And then probably slot machines, since you can have some machines closed to keep the distance. But I wonder what table games will look like, since those areas are are more crowded than others. I feel like table games, they'll just probably limit it to maybe 3 players per table or something, have a seat in between everybody. The real factor here is once the government kind of gives the okay for businesses to reopen in any capacity, it's going to be a question of whether or not people show up. And one of the unfortunate things I can say about gambling, and I say it is unfortunate because I've seen plenty of cases where there's a sad thing, people can't stop themselves. Some people want to be there and some people feel like they have to be there because they cannot stop themselves. And in that picture, I showed a picture earlier. Somebody I know on Facebook is how I opened this session. Last Thursday in Houston, we've got poker again. I think that there's a pretty strong argument that Texas Hold'em has players in closer proximity than regular table games does. Now, I do understand what you're saying about the distancing, because the tables are all closer together and stuff, but I think that they just keep every other table shut down. Normally in a casino, you're going to open up all tables near each other because it's easier to operate that way. So if you got 3 blackjack tables, you'll open 3 next to each other, and then the rest of the pit will be closed because you don't need all of those going at the same time. But what they'll probably do is they'll probably just spread it out and limit the number of players per table, and I think it'll probably work out that way pretty well. Some of the foot traffic might have to be sectioned off, so as people try to walk through the casino, they may put stuff on the floor to put them in certain directions. I'm not sure if there are any full-blown casinos that are actually open yet. I haven't really seen any of that, but I do agree with you with slot machines, by the way. You just open every other, but I think you can do the same in table games. But let me see, who am I looking up? I'm looking up Steve Forte. the mechanic, the best card cheater in the world. So I have seen some of these videos, and I looked through this. So, all right. So to speak to this, yes, it is absolutely possible for a dealer. So first thing I wanted to do is I wanted to see if he was pitching, okay? It is absolutely possible for a dealer to cheat in this particular method. Keeping track of the phony shuffle, all that stuff, it's totally possible for somebody to do. And I have worked with somebody who he has a video on YouTube where you can clearly see that he is grabbing the second card off the deck. And actually, I'm going to get that. 1 second. So let me find this for you guys. Here we go. So I'm gonna find this video where he's dealing the second card off the deck, and I'm gonna show it to you in slow motion so you can actually see it. If he still has the video up, which I can't guarantee he does. Let's see, which one is it? All right, I think he has it up still. It would have been recently. Just give me one moment, everybody. Because if I can find this, then you'll see how to do it. But then I have something that you'll be very interested to know about this. Here we go. All right. So this is the video that I want to show you guys. Are you ready? So you guys can see him dealing, and in this case right now, I'm gonna pause it just so YouTube doesn't give me a hard time about it. Because I'm only allowed to do like 5 seconds at a time. You can see that he keeps having the ace of hearts up there, right? And I should try to make this a little bit bigger. So let me go like this. So you guys can see it a little bit better. And I'll mute it. So he's pitching, and you can literally see, oh, now he's got the ace on the top, and he's pitching and he's skipping it, and now he's still doing it, but you can't really tell, right? So what is actually happening here? If we do this on 25% speed, and we do this again, you can see, well, you can see that's the ace still, right? So if you do this on 25% speed, again, this is someone I know, he's a great guy, one of the best guys I've ever met in my whole life. You can see how he's pushing the card up, and he's literally grabbing and pitching the second card on the deck. Okay, now is this something that I recommend that you do on your own? No. Why do I not recommend that? Here, you can see he's doing it again, right? This is how you can see he's doing it. But here's the thing. I can see this in slow motion, and guess who else can see this in slow motion? Surveillance. It is not worth, if you have a job in a casino and you are working in that casino for money that's an hourly wage in any way, it is absolutely not worth getting fired over, because it's not going to take very long for someone to complain, and the way that type of complaint gets handled is by going to the tape. And there are 3 HD cameras on every single poker table in most poker rooms nowadays by regulation. 3 HD cameras that they can go back at any time they want and go watch. And if they get alerted to it, they can zoom in specifically watching with way better HD than you can imagine to be able to tell what's happening. There's no way to get away with it. And what happens once you get caught doing something like that? Then for the rest of your career, you have to have a completely different job. You end up getting charged as much as the casino is able to charge you. You get fired. You'll never be able to have a dealing job again. It's wildly not worth cheating. And so my friend here that I just showed you the clip from, he is a magician. He's been a magician for years. He's also been a poker dealer. within the last year or so, he stopped dealing poker. But that's because he didn't want to, not because he was cheating, right? Like, being able to do this stuff is for magic. It is not for dealing poker. The cameras are ridiculous. Listen, if every single person that that was in the audience of a magician was sitting there recording it in extreme HD, they'd be able to see what a lot of the tricks are, right? Like, it's not like a magician is able to fool everybody and technology. They can just fool people. So yes, the answer is it is real, and it is nothing for you to worry about. It says your life is gone in a way. If you try to cheat, you're gonna get caught because of the cameras, because the evidence never goes away. Like, think about that. Imagine doing something illegal, like anything. Imagine doing anything illegal and it's in crystal clear HD and it never leaves. Like, you're screwed, right? It's just not worth it. In order to be able to cheat and get away with it on that level, you have to be so much better than just being able to do this stuff with the cards. It's just not worth it. So I think that's a really good question. I do get asked that from time to time. I did just show you a video. I have tried doing that myself just for fun, because I'm just like, wow, that looks awesome. It's really cool. And I can't do it, all right? Because what I try to do is, you could see he's pulling the card down and he's pulling the second one out and pitching it, but I can't make it look real, right? Like, it's super hard to, I don't know how to do it, because you have to push the top card off and just grab the second one and not let anybody see, and it feels impossible to me. Like, I'm kind of doing it, but you can totally tell what I'm doing. You can see me grabbing the second card. This is hard, okay? It takes a lot of practice, I'm sure. Imagine trying to do that in front of a table of people and hope that nobody notices. And on top of that, you have to do a phony shuffle, and there's shuffle machines in a lot of cases. You have to, like, keep track of where the cards are. It's almost impossible. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty interesting though, for what it's worth. Very interesting stuff. I definitely find a lot of value in it. Interesting. But yeah, I'm here to answer questions for everybody. And by the way, guys, I totally know that everybody's kind of burnt out right now from all of the lessons I've been doing. And everyone's like, yeah, I can see Mark during the lessons. I don't need to see him here. I get it. I don't expect as many people to be here as normal. My intent when the lessons are done is to continue to do the AMAs and just kind of keep contact with everybody. I do enjoy these AMAs. Right now, I feel like they're probably a bit much because we do have so much going on all the time. Plus, everybody's kind of in their own schedules, and with poker having been down, where there's not a lot of live poker and there's a lot more online poker, not as much stuff is coming up, right? It's just not as much happening. But that said, just in terms of YouTube, by the way, I really do think that this has been something I've kind of been, what's the right word? I feel really appreciative that I was able to create this YouTube channel. When I was creating this YouTube channel, I was not thinking of passive income or anything like that. But it was interesting, like right when I created the YouTube channel, almost immediately, because of the little ads that show up before the YouTube videos, I would get a little bit of money deposited into my account with direct deposit, like every month, just because of the content that I created for YouTube. And so I do recommend to anybody, if you have a specialty in anything, just create content and make YouTube videos that people like, especially if the content's going to last the age of time where people continue to want it, like True Poker Dealer. It's nice having that little like passive income that just pops into your account. Like when we go to college, we complain about, oh man, the student loans, I have to pay them every single month. It's like, if you go to YouTube college and you just like spend 4 years making videos constantly, you'll have the opposite of student loans. It'll just be money that pops into your account by direct deposit. As long as your videos are about something that you have some expertise in and people want them. So like DIY, stuff like that could be good. But which in a way, how to deal poker is like, it's a how-to type of thing, right? Let's see. ACM says, if you get caught, you're right. For a player, I think it's good to know that casinos never lose. Well, that's true, but it is absolutely true for everything. if you're playing against the house, you're gonna have a tough time trying to make money in the long run, like table games or something like that. But for poker, you can actually win in the long run. You have to be able to beat the rake and the entry fees. But the casino loves poker players that win in the long run because they're the ones that continue to come back. So yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Jiang Kong says, and correct me if I pronounce that wrong, what is the rule for showdown in an all-in situation? Does the player that is all-in must show their cards during a tournament? What about during a multiplayer situation? So first, thank you for that question. Now, I did create a video that is called The Showdown, and you asked this question, and I totally realized right now I did not talk about tournament. I was focusing mostly on cash at the time. So this question is something that not only am I going to answer it now, but you have just helped me remember that I need to go back and add a little bit of content about this for the showdown video that I did. But basically, in a tournament, every single time, so I'm going to say this. Most casinos go by this rule. The TDA goes by what I'm about to say. It's not 100% of poker rooms that do this, but almost everywhere, most poker rooms require, if there's one player that's all in a hand in a tournament, if there's at least one player that's all in, every single player that made it all the way to the showdown has to show their cards. So if you've got one player all in the tournament, and then these three play on the side, and then these two go all in, and this one calls, and there's the main pot that this player is eligible for, and then there's a side pot that these two players are eligible, or that this player is eligible for, and then there's another side pot that these two are eligible for, and it gets all the way to the river, then every single player has to show their hand. You as the dealer, you have to protect the muck in this case, and you have to make sure that everybody shows down. They do that to prevent cheating. Whenever one person's all in, everybody that makes it all the way to the end has to show. Similarly, if you have a player that's all in, so like let's say these are cash chips, but just pretend it's actually, you know what? I've sort of always wanted to do that. All right, these are kind of tournament chips. I'm making a mess. It's alright. I'll just have nobody clean it up but me later. We're making videos, so what are you going to do? Alright, so I've got some tournament chips here. So let's say that let's see. Alright, I'm shuffling. Why am I shuffling? Because I like to have a properly shuffled deck when I do something. Alright, so we're going to go like this, and we'll have a stack here, and we'll have a stack here, and we'll have a stack here, and I'll put a stack here, and here, and here, and here. So let's say the blinds are 25 and 50, and we'll say it's 7-handed in the tournament. It's pretty early in the tournament, no problem. There would usually be bigger chip denominations too, but I'm not going to worry about that. So let's say this player folds, and this player raises to 200. This player calls 200. This player folds. This player calls 200. And this player calls 200. And this player calls 200. All right. So we get ourselves a flop. So next, this player checks. This player goes all in. This player calls. This player calls. This player calls. And this player, we'll say they go all in for 200. All right. So now you've got a main pot where you take 200 from everybody. All right. And then you got a side pot where you've got 400 for everybody, or 100 for everybody. So the side pot's 400. And now we're also working on another side pot, right? So I'm going to do that to remember it. and I'm going to do that to remember it. All right, those little tricks that I've shown you guys, but we'll see more of this stuff in a little. All right, so now we bring the turn, and we'll say this player's first. They bet 200. This player calls 200. This player calls 200. Now remember, this is a separate side pot now. Normally you'd have a lot more room on the table to work with this. I'm just going to put it here. And then we get the river, and let's say it goes check, check, check. All right, so it went check, check, check. Okay, every player has to show. Everybody. Okay, the players that checked have made it to the showdown. So as long as somebody makes it to the showdown, they have to show down in most every tournament structure that you'll see. I cannot guarantee that every single time. I cannot guarantee that every single poker room will follow this rule, but it's a TDA rule, and it is the rule that I've seen at just about every poker room that I've been to in the last like 3-4 years. This is not everybody was on the same page as much before the TDA started putting these rules into effect. So similarly, what will happen is, as a dealer, right now you have this situation, and I see you gave me a very generous tip. Thank you so much. Super appreciate you. Happy to be giving you this info. So look, right now, all of these players, like, they're used to a certain thing, right? Let's see. So the first pot is going to be showdown between this player, and this player. Let me just see what somebody might have that would be good here. I'm going to do this just to get this to be an easier show, okay? So if this player right here shows down pocket aces for aces full, these players are not going to want to show their hands, right? At this point, they're going to feel like, I don't need to show. As the dealer, you have to know that they're going to try to muck, okay? Now, when we tell a dealer to protect the muck, we tell the dealer, do not cover the muck, but in this case, you probably do. You don't really want your hand on top, but you want to stop anybody from getting in here as you're telling everybody, all hands need to be shown down. And as a dealer, you would say, all right, all hands need to be shown down, but first we have to see for the outside pot. So you tell everybody to show. So then they would do it. You never show down someone's hand, by the way. You have them do it. They show their hands, you take it, you muck it, you take it, you muck it. All right, and then you push the pot to this guy. And now it's for this next outside pot. So you have the player show down their hand, take it, you muck it, you push the pot over here, and then this last player shows down their hand, and then you push the pot to them. So that's how that works. And thanks for showing the demonstration. You're welcome. Yeah, so that's how that works, and I do need to put that in the showdown section. Maybe I'll just clip what I just did and put it over there later. Let's see. So next question, it was Sparrows. Do you fold up your table when you do not use it? I had a tabletop like that, but whenever I would close it, it would seem as if the felt would get loose around the hinges. Was wondering if you had the same issue. I think so. Hold on. So this tabletop is a common tabletop that you can get, and you just put it on like a dining room table or something like that. And these, like you can see, it's in 3 parts. It is meant to be folded up. However, this particular one, somebody, I don't know if it's a business or an individual, decided to, here, let me do this so you guys can see it. I'm gonna like expand what you guys can see a little bit here for a sec. So here, look. If you look underneath here, you can see that this came with folding legs that are actually bolted and screwed into the tabletop. So the spacing was all made, and the incisions were all made, and when it came, I just had to put the thing together. But I think you can see this is now the legs fold up, but the table itself doesn't fold into 3 pieces anymore. I can literally just fold the legs, which is why I got this, because I wanted a folding leg table. I can literally fold the legs, but that's just about all that I'm going to fold in this table. So I haven't run into that. I just wanted to show that. So I hope that you could see. I'm gonna be honest. I can't really tell if you could see clearly what was going on underneath there, but I mean the bottom line is there are folding legs that are screwed into the bottom of this tabletop, and it's kind of been turned into a poker table as a result of that. So let's have me disappear again. Ooh, goodbye. You say gotcha. I love this design. I love the fact that it was only $180 to get this, and I basically have a poker table now that is quite awesome. Wait, I gotta shrink me down. Come on. All right, here we go. What a mess I left on the table, huh? How do you guys deal with me? This is the story of my life growing up. I've learned how to be clean, but it took me a while. I used to tell my mom, she'd tell me to clean my room all the time, and I would tell her, "What? The floor is the biggest shelf in the house," because I saw that somewhere once. And my floor growing up in my bedroom was quite a mess, but it's not like that anymore. But these chips on this poker table are like that. Again, super appreciate that John Kong. That was really nice of you. I have some of my contemporaries put a thing up on the screen. Always tip your dealer, and they say that people give them some pretty decent money because of that. I find that I've turned it on to be able to receive money, but I really don't like to push it on anybody, and it makes it so that when somebody like yourself is generous like you were, it even feels more of an impact for me. So that was really cool. I super appreciate that. Let's see. Now Junk says, what is your opinion on the WSOP main event incident where the dealer announced the incorrect amount of chips between the Italian and British pro with 11 players remaining? So in that particular hand, I have spoken about this before. Super happy to do it again. So in that particular hand, all right, normally when someone asks me that, I would want to actually show the clip, but I feel like YouTube will flag this video if I play that clip during this, so I'm just going to answer you instead. In that particular hand, the player with 11 players left, correct me if I'm wrong and if you're talking about something else, but the player with 11 players left bet something like 22 million in chips in the WSOP main event, and it wasn't that player, it was another player bet 22 million, and this player decided to call, but the dealer said that it was only 17 million, and so the player decided to call, and then later it was revealed that it was actually 22 million, and the player created a large fuss about that. And the question is how much should they be responsible to put out? And the player said it wasn't their fault, etc. They said they had bad eyes. I mean, he said all kinds of things. So I haven't watched this in a while, but my response to that is, well, let me make sure. What is my opinion? My opinion is, so the first thing I'll say is the tournament director was called over after the supervising staff went over to the table to make a ruling. So the player was not satisfied with the ruling and asked to speak to Jack. Jack being the VP of the WSOP, but he is the one that handles everything. He's the final say for all that stuff. It says the player did not verbally call, but pushed the chips to motion the call. The Italian player. All right. Well, let me do this. Might as well. WSOP dealer wrong amount. 11 players left. Yeah. So the first thing I'll say is this stuff happens in poker. I'm just going to kind of look at this again And let's see here. You know, I'm trying to watch this right now on here, and I forgot that I had it on super slow motion from before. So I'm like, why is this going so slowly? It's crazy. So first, I want to say that the player who made the bet, he made a regular bet, right? So it's not like the player who made the bet was trying to do anything fancy or tricky. He just made a regular bet, and that regular bet got taken and counted incorrectly by the dealer. Now, I hate to do this. I really hate to do this, but I do know people who have worked with that particular dealer, and I mean, as someone that works in the casino or has spent a lot of time working in the casino industry, you kind of get a sense of knowing who's good and who's not good. I was told, so this is anecdotal, I was told that this particular dealer was not of the quality that they should have been to be on that table, and they were only chosen because they were an attractive person. And I cannot speak to that directly, but that is the thing that I heard from somebody that is associated and has worked with those people before. I mean, to me, that's interesting to begin with, and that is kind of how the world works, especially when it comes to TV and all that stuff. But I totally believe it too. And to a degree, the thing I will say is this is what you get, WSOP, for putting somebody there who has a reputation for making mistakes. Okay? That being said, that's only if that's true, but it did come from a reliable source. And I'm sure that the person themselves is a sweetheart, and I'm sure that the person themselves made an honest mistake and doesn't try. But at the same time, your entire career is something that should be taken into account when you're put on a table like that. So there is something to be said for negligence on the part of the WSOP if in fact they did put someone in that position that should not have been in that position. Okay, that's my opinion. As somebody who's had to make those decisions about who should be dealing what games, you always want to go with the person who is going to make the least mistakes, and it just doesn't sound like that's what they were focused on here, which in my opinion, it should be a non-negotiable. That said, that is a rumor that I have heard, but it is from a somewhat reliable source. So I'm going to say it's probably true. So that being said, in this particular hand, the player was already in for some chips. Dealing during a game with irritated players can be a pain in the butt, and both sides can make mistakes. Absolutely true. So when the incorrect amount was stated, here, let's do this. So in this case, the player did not protest at all when it was originally said to be a call. It was only after the hands were flipped up and he saw that he had pocket tens against pocket queens that he was upset. So I think there's something that should be said there. In other words, a supervisor came to the table before the hands were revealed, said, look, you made the call thinking it was 17 because the dealer called the floor immediately. It actually has to be 22, okay? The player didn't protest. Then, after that, the player has now committed to 22, and he did not have an issue with the fact that he said call. He did not have an issue with the fact that his decision was going to be a call. After that, if you play it forward a little bit, he finds out what hand he's against, and all of a sudden now he's got an issue. So the thing I want to say is this. As a poker player, or we think of poker players and we think of them as almost having superpowers, right? Especially the good ones. They are able, using little information compared to what we would expect someone to have, They're able to make decisions about what somebody else has in their hand. They're able to make a read on another poker player in terms of whether or not their hand is going to win in relation to that other poker player. And a poker player, by playing hand after hand after hand and being in situation after situation after situation, is able to tell if they're good what somebody has. Okay? The best poker players are the best at that. Well, when it comes to being a poker supervisor or a person who has to make floor calls and make decisions, poker supervisors have to read poker players as well. But poker supervisors do a completely different type of reading. A poker supervisor is going to read a poker player for their integrity in a floor call. And I can tell you that Jack Eiffel is somebody who's had to do that on the highest level for years. And a lot of these other guys who are very used to these high pressure situations are able to not only figure out whether or not a player is in integrity or not, they're also able to figure out whether or not the situation is unique and different than the regular rule would otherwise say. In this case, before Jack got to the table, my supervisor radar was going off like crazy just watching this guy. Okay, I could 100% tell that he was not within integrity. And me telling you that when he saw that he was against queens, that's when he started to get upset, is not me saying that that's the information that I used. The information that I use is behavioral. It is the type of communication. It's not my fault. The victim line, like all these different things that this guy was doing were 100% out of integrity. The rule is super simple, okay? Every single poker player is supposed to be responsible to protect themselves. All the information that this poker player needed was literally on the table right in front of him. The $22,000 was not hidden. It was right there on the table. He has the responsibility to count with the dealer. The only difference is the reason he needs to be the one to ask the dealer to make the count is because the dealer is the one that's allowed to physically touch the chips. He's not allowed to go and physically count the other person's chips. But if you watch how it was done, the chips were counted very clearly so that he could absolutely tell how much it was. And he has the responsibility to speak up and say something if it's the wrong amount that's counted. It's really tough for the player who went all in to do that, because the player who went all in, if they say anything, it gives away additional information about their hand. That being said, there is absolutely an argument that the player who went all in should have said something if they noticed, but they're not the one that has to make a decision in this case. The player who's faced with the decision has to make that decision. So he, in my opinion, was basically thinking to himself, and it seemed as clear as day, he basically seemed to be thinking to himself, look, there's 11 players left in the World Series of Poker main event. If I can get one more spot, I make a ton of money. Let me try, right? If I can get one more chip, that can be worth $1 million, $2 million something dollars, right? I'm going to try. And it seems like that's what he was trying to do, and he was trying to use this in order to give himself an opportunity. And when Jack got there, he wasn't having any of it. And if I'm Jack or the people that are running the WSOP, keep in mind, this is all being televised, okay? If I'm Jack, I'm in the back. I've got this thing recorded. As soon as I'm told that someone's calling for me with 11 players left in the main event, I'm going to be back there watching the tape before I come out and actually make a ruling. I would not be surprised if he had already been completely briefed on the situation and seen exactly what had happened before he even made it out there. I don't know if you guys remember it, but it was about 8 minutes from the time he was asked to come out to the time he actually got out there. Unless he was in the bathroom, what else was he doing other than watching it, right? So he's coming out there, he's completely caught up to date. He has this negative, aggressive way of dealing with the players. I totally get it, but at the same time, that's a little bit too much. You don't necessarily get what you want by being aggressive when it comes to talking to players. But Jack made one mistake that is going to haunt him, absolutely. The mistake that he made was, in poker as a player, okay, there's a lot of shorthand communication that gets used, right? Pot odds is a shortcut way to say evaluating to see whether or not the amount of money that I'm putting into the pot is mathematically worth in the long run calling, right? Pot odds is the short language for that. Well, supervisors amongst each other and casino employees amongst each other have shorthand communication as well. One thing that you do as a supervisor when you are making a floor ruling, at the end of the ruling, it's common to emphasize the main point of the ruling. And when Jack did it, unfortunately for him, he didn't use his little filter to make sure that he would make sense to the person listening. Instead, he used the shorthand communication to the player. See, if it were me making that floor ruling, what I would be saying at the end of that, I would be saying, well, look, the rule is, at the end of the day, the rule is simple, okay? If you're going to call the amount that was said by the dealer, your call is actually calling the amount that's on the table. That's the rule, okay? But unfortunately, the thing that he said was, if you call 17, you call 22. And the way that it sounded was not the way that it was intended. The thing that he was actually saying was, if you call 17, you call 22, because according to the rules, by calling, you call the correct amount, period. But the shorthand was interpreted differently. I heard all kinds of pros and all these people weighing in by not understanding what he was actually trying to say. They said, no, you don't automatically call 22 if you call 17, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, he wasn't talking about the pot odds. He wasn't talking about the expected value. He wasn't talking about the poker decision. He was talking about the rule. The rule is if you call 17, you call 22. It's the same thing. And so therefore, once he made that call, he was in for the full amount. I think that that was a huge mistake by Jack, in the sense that his communication led people to think that he didn't understand how to play poker properly, and he didn't understand stuff like that. It's not what he was saying. And so that's basically my take on it. The poker player there was trying everything he could to get an angle. It was of very low integrity, in my opinion, and at the same time, I can't really fault it for him, because any extra chips he could get with 11 in the main is going to be worth potential big money for him. I would like to live in a world where everybody has the integrity and they're not going to try to do that. But I mean, he was even trying to say his eyes aren't good. It's like, well, this is poker. Like, it's fair for everybody. So you have to be able to deal with that. But let's see. I'm catching up with what you said here. He knew he was losing the hand at the point before the turn in river. LOL. He wanted a bail from accepting he made the wrong call. Absolutely true. And then you said the other players were upset with Jack Effel's, maybe I'm saying Eiffel, it's Effel's comment, if you call 17, you call 22. Absolutely. So I just explained this, right? And I want to make sure that I'm super clear. Jack was not saying it from a poker playing perspective. He was not saying anytime you're going to call 17 million, you're also calling 22. He was saying it from the rule perspective. Supervisors that make floor calls, it's a known thing that at the end of the floor call, you emphasize the key point of the floor call, which is, in this particular case, when the money's on the table like that, if you make a call for 17 and the amount is actually 22, you are required, according to the rule, in the rule book, you're required to call 22, which I've seen people covering it where they actually found the rule for WSOP where it literally says exactly that scenario. I have seen that scenario myself in there. And so that's what Jack was saying. He was not saying, as a poker player, if you make a decision to call 17, you're going to make that same decision to call 22 because the amounts are insignificant. No, he was saying, as a ruling, when you call, period, if you think it's 17 but it's actually 22, you're calling 22. That's what he was saying. He used supervisor shorthand talk, and it created a huge fallout because the thing that he said also has a meaning for poker players, and it was confusing. So that's my take on it. I appreciate you asking that question. I feel like to this day, barely anybody understands that Jack was in fact talking about the ruling. He was not in any way trying to needle the player. Like, it's the idea that he would be so power crazy that he would needle the player like that after they're in that rough situation by saying, it's only 5 million more, you would have called it anyway. Like, he was not doing that. He would never have done that. He was trying to emphasize the rule at the end. And as someone who's made a lot of floor calls in a lot of situations where there's been a lot of money at stake, I know what it's like to be in that situation. I know what it's like to end one of those conversations. I totally was thinking as I was watching it for the very first time, a year ago or whatever, I was totally thinking to myself, now you got to wrap it up. And then he did it, and I was like, oh no. Like, I can't believe he phrased it that way. But nonetheless, that's what happened. And I appreciate that question. For those that don't know, this was... as soon as this happened last year in the main event, it got spun in social media as a big deal, and people were talking about it. And look, I mean, most of the people that were talking about this were poker players, right? How often are you really going to get somebody who's on the supervising side of it to speak? Why? Because anybody who's a supervisor, shift manager, director, tournament director, any of these types of people, they don't want to start saying this type of stuff because they are going to be at risk of losing their jobs, right? Poker players can't lose their jobs as poker players. They say whatever they want, and at the end of the day, they get to keep playing poker, right? They can be critical, they can do all this stuff, but if you're a poker supervisor or a poker shift manager or a tournament director, or you run a big tournament series, like, you cannot speak up on this stuff, because one wrong step and you're going to get jammed up. You are going to be in a situation where people are criticizing you, even if you're right, like, it's not worth it. And so people just don't realize that. You're welcome. You said thank you for the great explanation from experience. You're welcome. I mean, it's certainly interesting. It's funny. I had a buddy of mine ask me this question, and I was like fired up. I sent him, it was the first time I can remember sending somebody a video response to a text message. Like, that was how fired up I was after I watched this whole thing. Just because, like, seeing the fallout and the backlash that people had over it was pretty intense. But, and I gotta say, my personal opinion, since you're asking, the poker player who was complaining in that point was wasting everybody's time, and he did not have integrity. There is responsibility on every poker player, especially when you get to those days, to have a sense of what the rules are. That rule is super cut and dry. Like, there's not a lot to it. Everybody at the table is responsible to know how much the actual chips are. That is a very common rule that maybe because I've been in the industry for a while, it's like super obvious to me, but I would expect that most of the pros know that as well. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's my feeling on it. Yeah, that one always fires me up a little bit whenever I get asked that question. I've looked at some other floor rules as well. Like, I don't like the way that some of these things are portrayed in by the announcers or the people that are involved in it, where, a dealer mucks a hand from a player that's all in, and it's 100% the dealer's fault according to the announcers and people on Twitter and all that stuff. It's like, no, like, there's two fundamental rules in poker. One of them is one player per hand. The other one is cards speak. The only thing that entitles you to win a pot in poker is your cards. Protect them. That's on you as a player. I think that it's hard for people in the industry to speak out because, one wrong move as someone in the industry and nobody wants to hire you anymore. But that's my view on it for all that stuff. So again, thank you for asking that question. Let's see. It's 3:15 now Eastern time. I do want to remind everybody of the schedule that's coming up. Let's see. Just in case anybody didn't know, I am in the middle of giving lessons on how to deal Texas Hold'em. Let's see. And the rest of the week looks like this. You can see the rest of my schedule. If you subscribe, you can see the rest of the schedule by going to the live streams, and you can see what's scheduled there. Tomorrow is lesson 10 at noon Eastern. It's missed blinds and buying the buttons. A lot of stuff to go over there. And then at 5 p.m. is lesson 11, which is how to run your game. Some interesting content in that lesson. That one's not going to be as long. Missed blinds and buying the button might take a little bit. I know that my outline is pretty big. How to run your game is pretty cool though. Like, you don't often get trained for what to do with difficult players and how to kind of navigate some of that stuff. So I'm definitely going to cover a lot of that. And I think that you know, a lot of the dealing schools focus on training dealers to be able to pass an audition, which totally makes sense. But then that dealer who was able to pass an audition is faced with being slower than everybody else at the casino because they haven't actually ever worked as a dealer before if they're coming out of school. And then on top of that, they're dealing with difficult players really for the first time in their life. So I think it's very important to teach people how to run your game, how to deal with difficult players, stuff like that, before they actually get to the audition stage, before they actually get into the casino. That insight can be very helpful. That's Wednesday. So those lessons, again, that's tomorrow. Noon is the first one, 5 p.m. is the second one. This is Eastern time. And then Thursday, side pots and multi-way all-ins, which I've been being asked to do this video for 8 years, and I'm happy to say, and slightly embarrassed to say, I'm finally getting around to it. 11 a.m. on Thursday Eastern time. Side pots and multi-way all-ins. Look, that's the only lesson that I scheduled for Thursday because I fear, with a smile, I fear that this one's going to take about 6 hours, but I'm hoping to get it done in 3. But it would not surprise me if it went considerably longer than 3 hours. And then lesson number 13 is on Friday, and it is at 11 a.m. as well, and it's calling the floor. And there's a lot of stuff for this one. So this week, the rest of this week has some pretty big lessons coming. Earlier today, we did straddles, etc. Yesterday, we did misdeals, action out of turn, premature card, and we did like the technical rules of betting, which is the over chip rule, and string bets, and like the half bet rule, whether or not it's a raise, does it reopen the action. We did all that stuff in lesson 7 on Monday. If anybody wants to see the lessons because they missed them, for about a week or 2, they're going to be sitting in the $4.99 per month membership section on YouTube. You just click the join button in my channel and you can get access to those. And then after a week or so, they're going to be moving permanently to their home for the course of How to Deal Poker for Texas Hold'em, where I will have gone through everything. So I am pretty close to wrapping up. After this week, I'll be about a week away from wrapping up all of these lessons and finally being able to teach people how to deal poker from start to finish, which I'm happy to say the information. I'm not doing the training, right? But the information will all be there, and it's going to be in the paid section. But it's not too much money. I mean, dealer school is like $1,200, right? So let's see. Jiang says, I dislike players saying blame it on the dealer when the cards are shuffled by a shuffling machine. Yes, and as a dealer who has used a shuffling machine and said, hey, there's a shuffling machine, be warned, the players say, yeah, but you cut it, and you're just like, ugh. Like, I mean, because it is true. When you have a shuffle machine, you put it in the shuffle machine, you get the other deck out, you put it here, and then you cut it. And then they're super happy to say, yeah, but you cut it, and you're just like, ugh. It's like I say to my kids in a total joking way. You know, whenever one of them jokes around with me by like smacking his head into my ribs or something, I'm like, why did I have children? You know, it's why do I deal to poker players? You know, at the same time, I mean, you know, listen, the way that I look at all that stuff is you're saying you dislike players saying things like that. I kind of put it into context because I think if they blame me for the bad hands and they blame me for the good hands by tipping me when they get good hands, I can live with that, you know. Overall, I get money for it. I don't get money when I deal in bad hands, but what are you going to do, right? I do get money when I deal in good hands, so I can accept the blame for the bad hands. A better comeback than there's a shuffle machine is something along the lines of, hey, you blame me when they're bad as long as you blame me when they're good, and I'm cool. Something like that. They tend to appreciate that, especially if you say it with a smile. Let's see. Yeah, so I got fired up and I feel a little tired. It's been a lot doing all these lessons. I'm not going to lie. It's a lot. And for anyone who's ever tried to do it, I'm going to say this. I am an introvert by nature, and I am sitting here talking. This is different for me. I am not used to doing this. I super appreciate every single comment that you guys put in the YouTube chat, because it makes it easier for me to know what to talk about, so I don't have to just like keep going kind of like, this is pretty hard. This is unedited. This is just on the fly. I'm trying not to say anything stupid. It's hard. As my friend would say, you can't stop yourself, can you? I'm like, I don't know. I'm trying. I do sort of miss working in the industry too. You know, it's been about 3-4 years since I did it. And I could see myself going back to work, especially like a couple days a week. Personally, even though I dealt for years, I liked being a supervisor better. I liked being able to walk around and interact with a lot of the dealers, and I also liked being a dealer. You know what? I liked being a dealer too. Both of these jobs are pretty fun. Like, as long as you don't mind confrontation, which I'm totally fine with confrontation, both being a dealer and a supervisor can be very fun. Supervising is hard until you learn how to do it. Dealing is hard until you learn how to do it. So they're both pretty cool jobs. Yeah, dealers don't, ACM says, dealers don't talk too much, so now it's the time. I mean, look, you can say that, but like I said, I am not used to talking this much. It is hard. It is hard to keep saying stuff over and over again. You guys don't know this, but before I started doing these YouTube lives, I created a paid membership section on Facebook, and I committed to doing one 30-minute Facebook Live every week, where I would go over some kind of a topic. And actually now that I've done that, I'm glad that I did, because I trained myself to be able to talk in a live stream setting. And I also created a bunch of content. I've talked about so many different things. I have probably about 100 different videos that once I'm done with these lessons, I'm going to start posting these on my regular YouTube channel. Some of them I might end up putting in the paid section because they're a little bit more detailed and stuff. But either way, like, I've got all this content now, and I learned how to actually talk in front of a camera where I don't have anybody here with me that I'm talking to, and I just have to kind of keep going. But that was only for 30 minutes at a time. Yesterday I spoke for about 5.5 hours. Man, was that a lot. It's crazy to think about, but to be fair, when I'm teaching, it's even easier than this right here. Because when I'm teaching, I've got my bullet points, I know what I have to get through, and I just kind of keep going through it. But it is still pretty tiring. But let's see. So, yeah, I think it's about time. I usually do this. I usually commit on Tuesdays from 2 to 3 or so to give myself about an hour. I put it in my schedule to do a maximum of 2 hours because I want to be available for anybody. But I am feeling pretty good about today's AMA. If anybody has any more questions, just pop them in here. But I know you guys have been asking questions during the lessons as well. So everyone's had a lot of opportunity to get all their questions in recently, which is great. Oh, somebody asked me a question the other day that I wanted them to ask in here. ACM, do you remember what they asked? And I said that's not exactly on topic for what we're talking about right now, to come to the live, because I will answer that if I can remember what it was. Maybe I should jump through and see what. Man, there's so many comments, so it's gonna be a lot to look through. Let's see. ACM says, I think your problem is that you know what to talk. You're good at teaching poker. Appreciate the compliment there, and yeah, knowing how to teach poker definitely does help me when it comes to being able to talk here, right? Like, if this was a channel about making dresses, I would not do very well. Or if this was a channel about woodworking at Home Depot, it's not my thing either. If it was a channel about science, I'd have an interesting time having that conversation. Yeah, too many questions to remember. Welcome to my world, but I actually appreciate that comment because it makes me not feel alone, right? But yeah. What else we got? I think that's about it. I feel good about winding down. If anybody wants to ask a last question or so, absolutely feel free. Let's see. I gotta say, I'm very impressed with YouTube in general for, they started out just allowing people to create videos, and now they create all these ways for people to make money, and I feel very incentivized by YouTube to continue creating content that people like. Definitely appreciate that. that YouTube has made it this way. And the stuff with the memberships is really brand new. Generally speaking, it's hard to be able to get memberships allowed in your channel, so I appreciate that YouTube lets me do that as well. And I gotta start getting people to subscribe more too. Like, I need more subscriptions. If I get more subscriptions, it actually makes a lot of this stuff more valuable too. I don't know. You guys, do any of you have any insights into how I can make this channel better? Maybe that's what I should ask about. How did you throw the card in the air and catch it? Well, there's two different types of pitches that I use. One of them is from the corner. That's harder to do. The other pitch is where you kind of make the card rotate around itself. And so just for fun, I got used to doing that. So you're basically grabbing the card so that it can rotate almost perfectly around the center circle here. And when you do it, it's a regular pitch, but it's from the center, and then gravity's going to bring it right back down to you. And so I enjoy doing that very much. I should probably create some TikToks with stuff like that nowadays, right? And promote True Poker Dealer just by or like catching it out. I can't always do that. But TikTok, you can do anything, right? Because even if you can only do it 1 out of 20 times, it doesn't matter. I will warn you, I have done so many different things like this with Copags, and when you start going too hard with them and the card goes flying and it hits a hard surface, it will chip the edge of the card. So I'm a little hesitant to do it with these. But I have thought about creating a TikTok or a YouTube thing, maybe off a True Poker Dealer, where I'm with other dealers and we set up poker tables in different places, and we play like golf, where you like almost like disc golf but with cards. I think that would be fun. But yeah, I do this. It's funny. You're saying that it looks amazing when I do this. The people that are in my life see me do this all the time just for fun when I have cards around, and I think they get annoyed because I do it too much. And it's almost like when you're outside at the beach and birds fly by your head and you're just like, right? So if they're using their peripheral vision and they see a card flying, they're like, it kind of keeps them on edge. But I've never hit anybody yet. It says advertise is the best with so many social networks. It's worth trying. Yeah, I mean, I sort of agree with that, and I sort of don't, right? Like, I'm working full time creating the rest of these YouTube videos right now. If I were to stop putting effort toward that and put it toward TikTok, I'd be missing out on this stuff on YouTube. So I do think that social media platforms are great, but everything takes time. So the question is, what does make the most sense to put my time toward? But yeah. So, what do I do now? I think I'm going to wind down and call it a night. I got a little bit more prep to do, so you guys know, for tomorrow's lessons. And I'm all prepped for the side pot and multi-way all-in lesson. I've got some more prep to do for the floor call one. I got some more prep to do for tomorrow. So, I'm going to get to that. And I mentioned this before. I'm not sure if you guys remember this, but every single lesson that I do, I have to do prep. I have to rehearse it to a degree to make sure that I'm not forgetting different topics, So ACM says time means money. Yep. Yes, I agree with that. It's not the way I want to live life, where like everything's about money, but I feel like I'm on a mission right now to create passive income that is greater than my expenses. So hopefully at some point soon I can achieve that goal, and then I will be able to truly devote myself to like really cool stuff that I'm excited about. Lil Venice says, no questions, just want to thank you for taking the time to teach us. I'll do the membership after the last lesson. Sounds great. Totally makes sense. I do want to give you the heads up that there's 2 different memberships. One of them is $5 a month. The other one is $50 a month. YouTube doesn't let you do those numbers, so that it's $4.99 a month, and then another one is $49.99 a month. The $4.99 per month one is only where the lessons are going to sit for a short period of time. They're not going to be there forever. I've only guaranteed that they're going to stay there for 1 week each lesson. So like, Today is Tuesday, so theoretically lesson 1 that was 8 days ago doesn't need to stay there anymore. So if you missed any of that stuff, I do recommend you get that sooner than later and you start catching up. Although I also totally understand you're trying to catch them live too. But that said, it's been 8 days. It's still sitting in the $4.99 per month section, and I'm planning on keeping it there up until I'm probably just going to move everything all at once. But I might start moving stuff a little bit at a time because it takes time to move all this stuff. But I appreciate you saying that you're going to do the membership after the last lesson. I totally understand. Assuming that everything goes well, my hope is once I start selling some of the regular $49.99 a month memberships for the full course, which I have a plan for how to do that once it's complete. If it goes well, I am also going to do live lessons for free on Omaha Stud and some of these other games, which you guys could jump in on too. And then there will be another wave of stuff like that that'll probably be a couple months from now. In the meantime, I have to create a bunch of content and start promoting the courses in general. I think the best job for you is to deal poker online with a webcam like the online live casinos and charge the players for entry. It's funny you say that. I can talk about it now. I was actually under NDA for a while where I wasn't allowed to talk about it. But in 2013, I went out to Malta. I got flown out to Malta by people who had seen True Poker Dealer. So they flew myself, my wife at the time, and my son. And we all flew out to Malta. We were there for 10 days. And Malta is like the online gaming capital of the world. And there was a group that had raised a bunch of money that were trying to create online dealers for online poker, but using live dealers to ensure that there's integrity. And they ended up running out of money and not being able to finish the project. They recruited me to come out there because they wanted me to train all these people that didn't know anything about poker in Malta. And I would have been happy to do it if it ended up happening, and it didn't. But I still do believe that the core vision is smart. I think that people will gamble on anything, and I think that one of the things that people would absolutely love with online poker is knowing that it's not rigged in any way, right? So if you did have a small table, and I actually built a prototype RFID table for this, if you did have a small table where a dealer could reach all the seats and you could have it electronic, etc., and you were dealing real cards, I do think you could have a cool product, which is what they were trying to do. So, I mean, maybe I could just do that here, but the regulation for online poker in the U.S. is like all over the place. It's crazy. I really do wish that were universal now, where online poker was actually legal, because what's happening now is all of these sites are able to play for money because the government didn't account for Bitcoin existing, right? People are buying in with Bitcoin. The law that was passed by the government only said that financial institutions in the United States are not allowed to interact with online gaming merchants. And so now they're not. Financial institutions in the United States are interacting with US Bitcoin companies, and the Bitcoin is a universal currency that they have a way to get into the online sites because it's a loophole that is outside of all this stuff. So now you can actually play for money online. It's crazy. If anybody wants to play online, by the way, I do have a referral code. It's www.wsopfreerolls.com and www.2.wsopfreerolls.com. They're just redirects. It's a referral where I get a little sign-up bonus if you decide to play online poker. But yeah, I just figured I'd throw that out there. But anyway, it is pretty interesting that the little joke comment that you just made could actually be a real thing. Like, technically, it would be possible if the right company put it together to be able to have online dealers, and charge the players for entry. Well, there'd be something like that. But I do also, through live poker coaching, I do deal out hands where we do a simulated game where a poker coach that I work with teaches people how to play 2-5 cash games better. That's pretty cool. I do that on Wednesday mornings, but it's in a paid group. but it's only $20 a month. It's livepokercoaching.com. You can sign up and then you get in. So what else do I got? I got a lot of stuff going on. Just listening to all the stuff I'm talking about, I'm like, man, I'm tired. I have a lot of stuff I'm trying to do, and this is outside of these other businesses that I've started as well. Oh well. Listen, I'm gonna let myself go rest a little bit before I have to continue to prepare for my lessons tomorrow. I really appreciate you guys. I appreciate all the comments, especially Jung and ACM today. You guys have been amazing. Lil Venice, I've seen you multiple times. I appreciate you being there, and I'm glad that you're enjoying this as well. Sparrows, for sure. You too. Appreciate your comments. Yeah, you guys are great, and I'll see you guys soon.